Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alexandra, and I'm your webinar host, oh my goodness, hostess, which means I will be handling all of your questions and answers. During the presentation, I have enabled the questions panel, which you'll see on the right-hand side of your screen. You may need to push the plus sign or the arrow to expand the panel. This session is being recorded and will be made available to all attendees should you care to listen to it again or share it with colleagues. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers for today, Mark Towler and Mark Singh, who will be presenting to you best practices in WhatsUp Gold. Mark, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you very much, Alexandra. I know it's confusing. There's two Marks on this webinar today, but I am Mark Towler, and I'm a senior product expert here at Progress, with my remit being WhatsUp Gold and all things involved with network monitoring. And what I'm going to do is give you a brief overview of monitors, and then I'm going to hand things over to Mark Singh, who is one of our senior product experts as well, and he will walk you through a demo explaining exactly how to implement them and what to use them for. So I'm going to give a quick high-level overview because monitors are not always clear, and I won't say it's a WhatsUp Gold specific terminology, but we don't use the terms exactly the same way as some of our competitors and some other monitoring solutions. What you'll often hear people talking about are sensors or sometimes elements. But in general, what a monitor is exactly what it sounds like, something that is looking at something on your network and either tracking it or instigating something or reporting on information. It's the visibility part of network monitoring. And they come in basically three different flavors, at least within WhatsUp Gold. You have active monitors, you have passive monitors, and then you have performance monitors. And active monitoring is, again, very much like what it sounds. It's a monitor that you're going to apply to a device that is going to emulate actual user behavior. It's going to simulate performance data, and it's going to allow you to basically ping parts of your network and determine whether there are any potential issues or problems or if something's not necessarily working properly. They're particularly important to put on newly integrated hardware so you know whether or not it's working in the first place. Passive monitors are, as they sound, something that doesn't actually do anything, just sits there and collects information from that device or from whatever you're applying that passive monitor to. It's not simulating anything, so it is actually collecting actual user data. It's more oriented around studying or analyzing the data that's going through there. It's more geared towards collecting large amounts of performance data so that you can track that for trends or for ongoing analysis. And it's what's going to give you a somewhat more holistic view of what's actually happening on your network as opposed to a test injection and simulated view. And then the other piece of this is performance monitors. And these are specialized monitors where they are determining how well or how fast applications are working. They really only apply to applications, occasionally traffic, but generally they're focused on performance metrics. And that's the sort of information that's not necessarily going to tell you whether it's up or whether it's down or what type of data. It's going to tell you how fast was the response on this, what kind of return times are we getting. It's analysis, but it's fairly simplified and it's fairly dedicated to one particular area. And I'm being a little vague because some of these do break the rules and some of these are a little bit different depending on how we look at them. So you've got your network set up, you're looking at a device. What's the process you want to go through when it comes to both managing and assigning your monitors? And we recommend kind of a 4-step process. And this isn't set in stone, but it's something to keep in mind as you go through. First thing you want to do is you want to look at your device and view exactly what monitors are already there. It's quite likely that there are already monitors that have either been applied out of the box, that have been applied by someone else if this is an existing device, or with WhatsUp Gold, we have the ability to add new devices and apply roles as they are added or as they are discovered. And those roles can include a variety of different monitor setups. So before you do anything else, take a look at the device and view what monitors you've actually got. You may have monitors that you're planning on adding. You may have monitors you don't want, and you may or may not have the monitors you're looking at putting in there, or you may just have monitors that aren't configured the way you want them to be. So that's absolutely fine. See what you've got first. The next one is assign those monitors, and the ones you want or the ones that are there. So this is going to be based on your needs, and it's going to be based on information you're trying to get. And you can also create custom monitors. But generally, you're sitting here going, what do I want to know about this device? What is it that I need? What's the information that's important? And then you assign them. Monitors can be switched on and off. So the next step is make sure that the monitors you've applied, and often they're switched on by default, but not always, or the monitors that are already there, are switched on. If you want them switched on, again, you can switch them off. And some of these are going to be defaulted. So for example, interface utilization, that's basically your bandwidth heat map, that's switched on by default for devices. You may not want that. So switches where you take a look and go, what's active, what's not, or I shouldn't say use active because that applies to a monitor, but what's switched on and what's not, and what do I want switched on. And then finally, there's the check. Not just checking your work, but there's a separate tab that manages the performance monitors. Because again, not all devices necessarily have or need performance monitors, or you may not necessarily want to assign them, but they are in a separate spot. So you want to check those stats and the utilization of that device, and check which performance monitors are assigned to it. And that's it. Go through that process, and you will pretty much be covering your bases in terms of assigning monitors. Now, a little bit more about the specific monitor types. I gave a kind of high level overview, but active monitors are the ones that are effectively checking and they're polling devices to get specific metrics from them. And again, this can cover a wide range of devices, so I'm not being tremendously specific. Usually you're getting things like MIB values, but you can also use them to test and measure availability, things like application availability or service availability. It's how you're going to apply queries to specific devices for reports. And if you're using our REST API capability, or really any of our other API capabilities, this is how you're going to be exercising those APIs. They're going to be using active monitors to do whatever you're trying to do with your REST API script, or with whatever the interface is that you're using. Passive monitors, again, aren't polling. They're effectively running as background processes. In the old days, you called it a terminate and stay resident, if anyone remembers DOS. But they're often OS level. They're often monitoring SNMP traps, and they are the ones that just sit there and track what's actually happening. They're not polling, they're not testing, they're not injecting data. They're just watching what's going through. They're not something you initiate. They just sit there and they report regularly. Most common, honestly, are the SNMP traps. They are looking for a preset event or threshold that gets exceeded or triggered, and they'll report on that, or they're tracking logs. And in WhatsUp Gold, we're tracking either Windows event logs, which are, of course, apply to all Windows devices, or syslogs, which can be used on Linux or Unix or other network devices as well. And so we can track those as well and ingest those. And then there's performance monitors. And the performance monitors, again, are geared specifically to determine what kind of performance metrics are occurring on a particular device over time. It's going to be tracking things like availability, and mostly things like ping time, lag, delay, even jitter, that sort of thing. You're going to use performance monitors to determine whether or not things are working as quickly as you want them to. And again, these are thresholds that you can set up. Use these to visualize trends, track overall performance, calculate things like averages. It's the performance monitors are the tools that are going to let you build a report that tells you things like how often are these particular applications under heavy load? What are the peak usage times for these applications? And that's going to help you architect exactly what kind of availability you want to have, and what kind of resources you want to have available for those specific applications. So that's great. When do we use them? And which ones do you use, and at what time? And the answer is a bit of a cop-out, because you want to use all of them and use them simultaneously. They're all important in their own way. And one thing I really want to stress is that you don't need to be shy about using monitors. You can apply as many monitors as you want to any device. And that requires a bit of explanation, because this is where we differ slightly from the concept of a monitor or a sensor versus a monitor or sensor or device license. And in WhatsUp Gold world, we license individual devices. If you have a WhatsUp Gold implementation, there will be a certain number of devices that you are that you've paid to monitor. And when we say that, we mean whether it's a 4-port router or 128-port switch or anything else, that's one device. But then you can apply as many actual monitors to that device as you wish. If you've got a 48-port switch, you can monitor all of those 48 ports. You can monitor the CPU. You can apply as many monitors as you want. We don't care. You're not paying any extra for them. All right. A lot of our competitors charge by either the sensor or the monitor. So when they say you're monitoring a switch, they're saying you're applying a number of monitors, all of which they will charge you for to that switch. So that's where you might not want to monitor all 48 ports of that switch if it's going to cost you extra money. We would like you to be a little bit freer with your monitor. So we want you to be able to apply whatever you want, whenever you want. The more information you have, the better off you're going to be, and we don't see a reason to limit that for you. All right. As I said, the active monitors will check whether or not that device is up or down. The passive monitors are going to let you know what's going on in terms of events, and the performance monitors are going to give you performance metrics. And if you apply all of them, you're going to be in a much better place to be able to determine exactly what's going on with that device or that switch or that application that's on that device. So with all of that in terms of theory set, hopefully, I'm going to hand things over to Mark Singh, who's going to walk you through a demo and give you an idea of exactly how this does work within WhatsUp Gold.
All right, thank you, Mark. Let me go ahead and share my screen now, and let me see here, audience view, and we're going to share. Wait, that's not the screen I want. I want this screen. All right, so I am sharing my screen there. Mark, can you confirm that you could see this?
I can see your screen, Mark.
All right, very good. Thank you. All right, so when in WhatsUp Gold, any configuration is going to happen under the settings column, and this is where we're after right now. Where we're going right now is going to be in the libraries section here, and more specifically monitors. When you go into the monitors library, there is going to be a set of default monitors that are already defined, things like FTP, HTTP, nothing really fancy. There's just some basic TCP monitors and so on. Anything that requires any type of SNMP or Windows credentials beyond the basic SNMP monitor, you'll have to add them yourself. And to start that process, you want to go to the Add section here, or the plus sign, and select which type of monitors you want to add. Now, Mark just went over various scenarios for different monitors. I like to start from the bottom, and I'll show you some examples of some performance monitors here. So one example of a performance monitor is going to be something like an interface utilization or CPU memory and so on. Those are what we call the default monitors. In fact, any device, a switch, a router, even a Windows server, typically you'll find that they have multiple performance monitors assigned to them. If we took a look at a switch or network device, you will see interface utilization, and you could click on the links here to see data over time or that we've collected, or you could go into the performance reports. All of these top 10 here that you will see in this top 10 report, for example, these are all examples of the default performance monitors: CPU, disk, ping response time for latency, and so on. These are the defaults. Now, to create any custom performance monitor, we want to go into the monitors library here, and then select performance monitors. And from here, what you're seeing are various options you have in terms of what type of performance monitoring data we could collect. Something as basic as an APC UPS battery output monitor, which simply collects the battery output on your APC devices. WhatsUp Gold also monitors, or it also integrates with AWS CloudWatch as well as Azure Performance Monitoring for those environments. If you're monitoring those, you see there's JMX, there's REST API performance monitoring, SNMP for using any custom SNMP MIMs that you have. You can even do a SQL query, which will connect to Microsoft SQL, MySQL, or Oracle databases and extract numbers or values. And then, of course, you have your WMI monitoring, your Windows monitoring. Those are specifically for Windows operating systems. So this is basically your list of performance monitoring types library where you could use these to define a number of various monitors where as long as we could extract a number, we could plot those values for you over time. And so what you'll end up with is under performance, you'll see something called custom monitoring, where in this view, you will see if there anything configured, you'll be able to see them here in this particular window where you could track information over time. So as an example, just as we can do with the interface utilization, all performance monitor, all custom performance monitors, as long as we're grabbing those values, we could plot it on a graph for you, and we could show you how they trend over time. And of course, we could also set alerting based upon thresholds. So if it goes above a certain value or falls below a certain value, you could get alerting on those. So the second type of monitor we have that was discussed is the passive monitors. So in this case, not actively polling, but passively listening in the background for these events. And you have things like Windows events, which is a very good monitoring option if you're not necessarily trying to poll your Active Directory server, for example, every 60 seconds, but it will sit there and listen, right? And it could be an event ID, it could be maybe you want to track something related to a specific user or a specific description content, any of it. So once you have the conditions in place, you can then define the monitor, and then what happens there is you assign the monitor, the passive monitor, WhatsUp Gold. Whenever those events are triggered, WhatsUp Gold will take whatever action you've assigned to it. And then you have syslog for your network devices. If you configure those devices to send syslog messages to WhatsUp Gold. In this case, it's not serving as a syslog collector necessarily. It's just simply using it to target specific syslog content. Maybe there's some critical warnings or errors that you're tracking via syslog, and WhatsUp Gold can take that action there. And then you have things like SNMP traps, where you want to listen for a number of traps. Maybe you want to know, for example, when a link goes on up, or you get a link up trap, which is a port going active on a switch, for example, and you could say, okay, whenever this happens, I want to know about it, so we can enable the link up trap that's already defined, and then apply it to your switches and associate an alert to it or an action policy to it. And so whenever a link up event happens, or even a link down event, WhatsUp Gold can go ahead and alert you on that. So those are your passive monitors there. And then finally, we have our active monitors. Now, let me jump back to this main view here. So under my network, you'll notice there's a legend here. Everything that's green is basically up. Everything that's down is red. Anything with a red dot, like this guy here, means that the device is online, but there's a monitor on it that is down. In this case, one specific interface. It's been down for quite a while, actually, 171 days. So what changes colors? What is it that changes state on these devices? And WhatsUp Gold monitoring is going to be the active monitors. It's not the performance monitors. We could set alerting based upon performance monitoring. It's not a passive monitor. You'll get a different indicator on passive monitor if that event happened. The red color, green color state change are happening because active monitors are changing states. So ping is the most common active monitor. That is the one that is applied by default. But in this list of monitors library, you have a number of additional types of active monitor types. So just to take a few of them for example, again, there's APC UPS monitor, but this time we're not looking at battery output. We're just simply looking at, does it meet a certain status? Is it in a normal state or not? Is it in a under a certain capacity? Is it running below a certain runtime, or is the load above a certain percentage? And then there are a number of errors or faults that are possible there in APC UPS batteries. So it's simply using, basically checking to see if whatever we're polling or querying, does it meet the up criteria or the down criteria, and then it changes its state. And so here again, you'll see a number of them. You have DNS, you have email. File properties is a really neat one. This one actually, if let's say you want to know if a file's been modified within a day or maybe the last hour, you could point this particular monitor to that UNC path of that file, and WhatsUp Gold will check that for you. You have other types of monitors like this folder monitor. The HDD content monitor basically use that to point at your any website or your website if you're responsible for it. And what it will do, this is just basically looking at a specific content on that page that you will provide, and then based upon whether that content is found or not, it will be able to determine whether the page is up and running or you experience some other type of error or warning there on that page. And then you have other things like PowerShell, printer monitors, process. This process monitor will let you know if you're monitoring, will allow you to monitor processes that are running in the background. So you will be able to then, let's see if I don't know that I have something here with an example, but if we had, just like we do here, so you could pick any executable that is running on your devices. This also applies to Linux systems, by the way, this particular monitor, where we could look at background processes and then determine whether they're running or not, to select it to monitor it, and then determine the condition. Do we want to determine the down condition because it's running, or whether it's not loaded? You get that determination again, and you define it and assign it to your device. And then you have other types of monitors like service monitor. This is more specific to your Windows systems. And again, just like we did earlier, it will work the same way. You just basically point it at your devices. This is more specific for Windows systems, and then like so we can then select which service we want to monitor and then apply that monitor to the device. A few other ones that are popular are things like the SSL certificate monitorer. In this case, you point it at the URL, and it will let you know. Let's say you want to know if the certificate is going to expire within the next 30 days. You could go ahead and set that, and then get WhatsUp Gold to trigger a down status if that criteria is met. And you see there's SNMP monitoring as well. All your custom SNMP needs. You have your SQL query monitors, and you have seen some of these in the performance monitor areas. And again, the performance monitor is not necessarily telling you whether things are up or down. It's just simply tracking what the values are at the time. So we could, you could trend it. You could look at whether it's rising, going, is it falling beneath a certain value? Just numbers for you to analyze. Whereas a SQL query monitor in the active monitor stage is simply looking at whether a certain condition is met, and if it isn't, then it's down based upon the results. The SSL certificate monitor is here again, and then one of the core functions of WhatsUp Gold is monitoring of storage. So NetApp, EMC, Dell Compellent, for example, those are all storage type environments that we can monitor, and then the appropriate storage monitors are going to be applied to those devices. You could define basic TCP/IP monitoring just by pointing at a specific port, set a timeout, and then doing the send expect statement against that particular device. And so basically what we're looking at is we're sending a specific query and we're expecting a specific response. So, like again, if you were checking Telnet, or you want to check to see if SMTP is responding on an SMTP server, we will expect for something like a 220 response. And then some others here that might be of interest beyond the TCP/IP monitor are going to be things like WMI formatted monitor or WMI monitoring. So this basically looks at perfmon on the monitored systems to determine whether things are available or not. So you can basically define a perfmon monitor. And again, just like with the others that we just tried earlier, it's just a matter of pointing it at the device, and then once that happens, it'll be able to load all of the Perfmon objects. So these probably look familiar to you. There's processor, you can see logical disk and so on. All of this are, these are values that you will get if you were to connect to that same system remotely and then go into its Perfmon settings. You could track all of this data. So any piece of information that we're collecting here, we could select, and then you will then be able to define the monitor based upon what is it that we find here. So if you want to track any value really, what you're looking for is to see is it returning any type of value, and then based upon that, we could determine whether it's in the up criteria or down criteria. There's a constant value setting. So we're checking to see, is it a constant value we're after? Is it a range of value we're after where there's a low value, high value? A good example of this, for example, would be disk space or free disk space. If there's a certain threshold or certain bottom number that we want to be, okay, if it goes beneath this number or even above a certain number, we want to know about it. So that's your WI monitoring, and these are all your monitors. Now, once you have those assigned, a few ways for you to assign them to the device. So you define them in the library, and the next step is you go to the device, and then you'll see on the monitors here, there's going to be a plus here again where you could add, and you select which monitor you want to add to that device. So it could be all of them. It gives you the ability to look at various items. So in this switch, for example, I can monitor fan as an active monitor, fan status. I can monitor port status, so all the ports, whether they're online or not, or active or not. I can monitor for performance monitor, like interface utilization, where I'm tracking bandwidth, I'm tracking traffic, I am tracking errors, I'm tracking discards. So 4 different pieces of information can be gathered using just the interface utilization performance monitor alone. Again, useful for trending performance over time. And then we could go ahead and say, okay, let's go ahead and add a passive monitor. I want to know when a port goes online on this switch, and we could say, okay, let's select SNMP trap, and then I want a link up trap, and we can go ahead and assign an action policy to it. So, we could do it. Let's email Vincent, for example, hit OK, and whenever the link up happens, Vincent is alerted. So that was a rundown there of the monitors available in WhatsUp Gold and how you will assign them to your device. You could also, let me finish it with this. You can also assign to devices in bulk. Just go to Edit Devices here, assign monitors, and then select which monitors you want to apply, and that will do so in bulk on these devices. So any questions there, we will open it up, and I'll just turn this back over to Alex.
Great. Thanks, Mark, for that awesome presentation, and Mark for the other presentation and demo. We've gotten quite a few questions rolling in. Some are related to if the recording will be available, and yes, we will be sending the recording tomorrow, so be on the lookout for that. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Is there a way to, oh, go ahead, Mark, go ahead.
No, I was just going to interject and mention that if you'd like to give WhatsUp Gold a try yourself and do some and play a little bit with what Mark was just showing you, you can visit whatsupgold.com for not only more information on monitors, but also for a free trial. And we do have a live interactive demo going on there. That means you can actually take a look at WhatsUp Gold in action, click around and actually try some of the stuff. It's a read only. You can't make any changes, but it will let you kind of walk through what Mark was just showing. And with that, I will now say, let's move forward onto the questions.
Sure. Is there a way to automatically generate performance monitors or import them from an XML file, for example?
Well, no, so the monitors, you'll have to define them each. So there's not an import function there in that instance. Where you'll import them. What you can import from an XML file will be something like which devices you want to monitor. You could do a host file import of devices, but then once imported, you could apply those monitors to those devices. Now, if I were to, let me see here, I believe I was still sharing, or I thought I was. Let me go ahead
Here,
and
let
get,
me, I'll make you the presenter again so you can share.
yeah, I wanna, there we go. So show my screen. Waiting for the next screen. Okay, so here we are with this device. You do have the ability using the roles library to say, okay, let's import a specific set of devices, and then based upon the type of device it is, whether it's a router or a switch or whatever device it is, you can apply a certain set of default monitors to them. And so, and in fact, you could apply a certain action policy to them as well. So, and that will only apply to newly discovered devices, not existing ones. But you can, preemptively just say, okay, if we discover a certain set of device role, then apply these specific monitors to them, these specific actions to them, and then that way you could get it done automatically. Other than that, you're basically going to be creating these monitors from the monitor library. All right.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry, there's a few more, lots more, I mean. What is the difference between link down and TCP connection close?
The link down is just simply the port. I'll have to look back into see what I mean, that was an old status thing going back into the 90s. Some default settings on SNMP traps from switches and so on. But the link down specifically has to do with the link monitor or the interface monitor going into a down state. As opposed to the link up monitor where those go into an up state. So we're looking at interface status there with those. So devices use a trigger or have triggered the link up or link down monitor. Whereas something with TCP close, that is a whole different, that is not necessarily speaking to interfaces. That is specifically speaking to whether there's some type of any TCP connection, whether it was open and closed, that is not interface related. The link up and link down are specific for interfaces status.
Awesome. What about if a color shows both red and green on a single line?
Yeah, so what that is pointing to is a device where a specific port on this device is not active or is not in an active state. So it's gigabit Ethernet here, 1018 is currently in the down state on this switch. So that's why it's reporting a down status here. And so the line represents the status of the port. Whereas on this side, that port is in an active state or active admin state.
Awesome. Any recommendations for high volume devices, meaning can I have multiple servers to handle the load and external database?
Okay, so one, you can have an external database. WhatsUp Gold ships with SQL Express, but you can use your own external Microsoft SQL Server database. And two, you can use, there is a load balancing option or scalability pollers where you can add additional pollers onto other systems that will then serve as the polling machine. It will not be a full instance of WhatsUp Gold, just simply a poller instance that you're installing on a remote system. And what this does, it allows for load balancing. Or maybe you want a specific poller to point at a specific subnet, and then you provide that subnet. But the primary role is for load balancing. Now, that does not become an issue until you start getting into the tens of thousands of monitors, and then the average lag seconds keep going up, meaning it is not completing its poll cycle with the available load within the designated period or time. So default polling happens every 60 seconds. Performance monitoring polling happens every 10 minutes. And so when the lags start going beyond 1 or beyond 0, it means that it's not keeping up with the number. But again, that the number here is going to be ridiculous before you get to that level. But you do have the option of adding load balancing options here, scalability pollers.
Nice. How do you clear it to ensure there's all green lines?
Well, this is not going to change to green unless that port is back up, right? Currently, the port is in a red state, meaning it's reporting a outage. And so unless that port comes back online, that will not be, that line of color is not going to change back to green. Green just simply means it's reporting an up status. So that you have to basically, WhatsUp Gold is basically giving you a status of what's happening on your network. So you go to the device, deal with whatever the issue is that it's dealing with. So it's not going to cover it up by giving you a different status than what it actually is, unless you went and removed that monitor completely. So I can go into this device and go to gigabit 1018 and say, you know what, I don't even want to monitor this anymore, right? And so if I were to, delete this guy and remove it, and go back to the map view here, let me go ahead and close this. You'll get a full green line, but that's not a true indicator of what's happening. So what I did was simply remove it from the equation. But it's not a true representation of what's happening. Right?
Yep, sorry. Will we have another webinar on how to set up alerts, emails, etc.? Yes, we will. Thank you for your recommendation, and we can add that to the queue. We love recommendations, especially on best practices, so we will add that. Thank you. If I can make changes to a switch or router, what is the way to auto update the changes outside of rescanning the device?
Well, a rescan is how WhatsUp Gold determines if there are any changes or anything. But if you want to automate changes on a device, you could use the config management add-on. This is useful for backing up your configuration and so on. But you can use the task library to push updates and changes to your devices automatically. But beyond that, if there are any changes happening with these devices, maybe some attribute change, maybe if you go into the device properties here and look at its attribute, maybe one of the changes is that the location change, maybe it's a different city this time. Well, through the discovery or scheduled scans, which is always recommended, you can go back, or WhatsUp Gold will go out and then determine if there are any changes on that device, and it will update it. But all we will need to do is do a scheduled scan to run at a specific period, and then it will go out there and find any updates on those devices.
Awesome. We're monitoring our ASA, but I can't figure out how to monitor any Connect VPN.
We should have some on the WhatsUp Gold community side. There are some knowledge-based articles we have out there on VPN monitoring. It will require SNMP monitoring, but there's some specific sets of the specific SNMP queries you could do to monitor the status of your VPN connections. But the WhatsUp Gold community, you can type that into Google, WhatsUp Gold community. You can even type VPN, and you'll get some results there on using everything WhatsUp Gold.
Awesome. All right, we have time for one more question, and if we didn't get to your question, we'll be sure to have someone answer that to you directly after the webinar. Is WhatsUp Gold capable of getting network data from different subnets?
Absolutely, absolutely. So a different subnet is not what's stopping WhatsUp Gold. What would stop WhatsUp Gold is if there are any firewalls preventing certain connections from happening. That is what is going to affect that. So definitely you will be able to get data or be able to monitor data in other subnets as well. I did include a link there on monitoring ASA VPN with WhatsUp Gold in the chat. So anyone interested in that, grab that, take a look at that.
Awesome. There are so many questions that we weren't able to get to, and I will be sure to have someone reach out to you guys and answer those afterwards. As a reminder, this session was recorded and will be made available to all of you after the session. If you have any further questions, you can reply directly to your GoToWebinar email and I will receive it and make sure that it gets to the right person. I wanted to say thank you to all of you and thank you to both Marks for that awesome presentation. We look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Thanks again.
Thanks very much.